Hey folks, this is Tracy with Scrappy's Rustics. Today we are using a witch's boot and a witch's hat from Dollar Tree. This really opens my mind on all the things we can do with this type of craft piece from Dollar Tree. So we're simply going to take all this tinsel stuff off. And being crafters, you know, we'll save that. Might need it someday for another project. So you're going to remove them all the way. And there you have your boot. And we're going to do the same to the hat. Right down to the mold frame part. The boot was super simple. Came right apart. Two perfect pieces. The hat, not so much. I ended up trying to clip it down the center the best I could. However, it wasn't perfectly even because the way that the little plastic things were put together were not even. I tried my best just to make it straight. The boot was perfect, absolutely perfect. So now we are going to make some molds. We have IOD trimmings. I think that's the trimmings 1. Yep, trimmings 1. I think that says trimmings 1 mold. And IOD clay. We're gonna make a bunch of those. And we are going to put strips of the clay starting at the top and eventually make our way all the way down. It's the first time I'm ever doing this, so it took a little finagling at first to figure out what to do, which way to go. But these make the perfect, I want to call it a mold, but it makes the perfect mold in order to do a clay type like this. So I think any shape, for the most part, this could be done to. Especially like the pumpkins, they would be very easy to do because it's just like, you know, a round ovalish shape where the boot has a little more tricks and turns. So we went row by row all the way down and just cut it to fit. This tip of the boot was a little bit tricky because it's just an awkward angle. And of course everything isn't perfectly straight, but overall it wasn't too hard. The very tip of it gave me a little trouble just because it was such a little space to work with. But in the end, we ended up working it out. It's so cute. I love this project. This video is a little bit long. This project was very involved, over 4, almost 5 days, in between letting the clay dry and the different parts we did till we get to the end. So there's our boot, all done. So now there's spaces in between each strip of trim and the mold. So just take a little water and wet the clay, and it just helps them mend together so there's not a big, huge gap. Now we're going to do the same for the hat. We're just using a different mold. This is a trimmings 2. I'm just putting some cornstarch in my mold. And I wanted to do this step to show you how to do the mold, in case you've never done one. You don't have to put cornstarch, but it certainly helps to release your mold when you're ready. So the clay I'm using is IOD, which is Iron Orchid Designs. It's a little bit more expensive than the others, but it's just a really good quality clay. It doesn't take a lot of kneading. And I mean, all air-dried clay shrinks and cracks. This just seems to shrink and crack less than the others. So you just want to push it in your mold real good. The cleaner you get it in your mold, the better results you're going to have and less cleanup you have to do. So if you got to spend a little more time cleaning up the back before you take it out of the mold, you should do that. So I'm just taking the credit card and it's taken off all the high points and it gives me a nice flat back. That one went very nicely. And I'm just placing it on a piece of wax paper. Look at the details in that. We're going to do the same process as we did with the boot. I'm going to go layer by layer and all the way up. The hat was much easier than the boot because there wasn't so many twists and turns. I'm just taking a little bit of extra clay on the ends and wrapping it around to secure it. I didn't use any glue either. I just used the clay. Look at the detail in that. It's incredible. I just used the clay itself for it to dry and adhere itself to. So I'm making one more strip for the brim of the hat. However, after I put all my clay and all of that away, I realized I didn't do the bottom brim. So I end up doing that off camera. You always want to keep your air dry clay wrapped up in the bag because it will dry fairly quickly on you and then you'll be mad. Again, just flipping it over, putting it on some wax paper. This hat went really well. Like I said, I didn't use any glue. I just used the mold itself, the hat mold, and just kind of wrapped the clay around it. And it shrinks as it dries, so it got a good hold on it. But this was super fun and it really opens all the possibilities. You know, Dollar General comes out with these little type of tinsel-y things for every holiday pretty much. So it'll be fun to see what we can create in the future with whatever they put out for us. Like I said, I did add the bottom brim later when it was laying there to dry and I was like, oh no, didn't even think to do the bottom. So again, I took the water and just in between each row, I just got it wet so the clay kind of adhered to itself. So when it dried, it didn't shrink and pull apart too much. So cute. There they are dry. That's what they look like in the back. There's the bottom part I did of the brim. That is black chalk paint, and that is neon purple from Pop the Color. This color is crazy, and I don't know if you could get away with this color on any other project or any other season besides Halloween. This color is something. Look at that. This took a total of 2 coats. The black, I think I only did 1, and then I did a few touch-up. The black paint, chalk paint, always seems to cover really, really well. The clay is so porous, it sucks it right up. I ended up going back in with a smaller brush, just because I couldn't get in some of these areas on the boot with that big brush. I almost dropped it. I just think these are so adorable. This boot is everything. Just love it. I'm just coloring in all the little white spots that I missed. Put that guy aside. Get the hat painted. Like I said, this took me almost like 4.5, 5 days. Not for just this whole part, but this whole project altogether. This is just regular black chalk paint. You'll really see all these details pop when we put the next layers on these guys. There we have it. Okay, so that paint is all dry. That took 2 coats. So now we are gonna wax the boot. Clear wax from DIY and black wax from DIY. Some baby wipes, wax brushes. If you don't have baby wipes, you can use any lint-free cloth, and some water works as well. Depending on what look you're looking for, you may not even need a dampened cloth. You can just use a regular paper towel or lint-free cloth. You can see I have a pretty good amount of clear wax on there. And the reason to clear wax it first is because if you put a darker or lighter wax on immediately, there's really no room to take any back off. All the bristles kept falling out of my brush during this, by the way. I apologize for that. So the clear wax on first gives you more control of your next color wax. Also, for some reason, on your next color, if you put too much and you don't like it, you can reapply clear wax over it and it works like an eraser. It will just take it right off. I couldn't get in some spots of the boot, so I just used my finger. And be generous with the clear wax. And sometimes, depending on how big your project is, you might have to go back over it because your surface, depending on how porous it is, which clay is, it might soak it up. So you might need to put a fresh coat on it. So we're done with the clear. And this black is very, very black. It's not dark, it is black. DIY products are all natural. So sometimes the natural oils make their way up to the top. So I had to give that one a stir. So I cut that part out so you didn't have to see it. But yes, DIY products are 100% natural. And the first ingredient is love. So now I'm just putting the black dark wax over the clear wax. And you want to push it down into all the nooks and crannies, all the lower spots. When we take our baby wipe, we're going to take it off all of the high spots. Now this tones down that neon purple and it really shows all the definition, look at that, and details in the mold itself. Again, if you get a spot that's, got way too much black in it and you can't get it out by wiping it, just add a little clear wax in there and it'll remove it. It works just like an eraser. So I did this in sections. So I didn't want a lot of drying time. I wanted to be able to wipe back what enough. And there we go. Continued all the way down the boot. And there we have it. And I broke a little piece off in there. I ended up gluing it on later on. Now we're going to do the hat. Now the hat, we're going to actually do a paint wash technique. This is the, I think maybe 3rd time I've done a paint wash. I've never done it with dark to light. So I did do a little test piece on a junk piece of clay I had to see if it would even work. And I was so happy with the results. I actually like the looks of this hat better than I do the boot. So we will definitely be doing this paint wash technique in the future. And this purple it just sat in these nooks and crannies. You'll see, it's just beautiful. I love the way it came out. So I watered down the paint, a good amount. I'd say a little more than half water to paint. And I'm doing the same thing I did with the wax. I'm just pushing that paint and water down into all the low points, all the nooks and crannies. And we're gonna just wipe it back. Now this paint is wet, where the wax is, a little thicker, it sticks a little better. So I did go back in and touch up a few little spots where I wiped too much off. Now I didn't treat this beforehand with anything. It's just the black chalk paint. Look how that sits in there. Oh, I love this look. I love the black and purple together too. We did that for the entire hat. Oh, I love it, I love it. I love the contrasting colors. So now we're moving on to our board. I've got 3 pieces of scrapbook paper. I think it's Tim Holtz. I have 2 different packages and they were mixed up. And the wood surfaces from the Dollar Tree. You all know, you're familiar with those. So I just put a generous amount, excuse me, of Mod Podge down. Excuse me. And stuck the papers to them. So the papers came that size. I can't remember the name of what they call these. They're for scrapbooking, but they are from Tim Holtz. I don't know the correct term of the smaller scrapbook papers, but that's the actual size of them. I did not trim those. And I laid all 3 pages down and the middle one right over the other 2. Now, 2 things. I should have done the overhang all on the same side, which I didn't. And I also put the scrapbook paper because there's the middle part, there's a right side and a, upside and a downside. I put it upside down from the hanger, so I have to take that hanger off and put a new one on. So I goofed this one all up, but it's all fixable stuff. So that took a little effort of sanding that little bit of paper off all the way down the one side and down the other side. So that's just sandpaper, and just kept going, sanded the edges off. There we have it. See how it says the word there? Well, the hanger's at the bottom now. So I used the Rust-Oleum flat enamel spray paint. That is a glass jar, which I thought looked just like a witch's cauldron. Some other little random glass jars I had here and there, and I think they came in a packet. They might have been Tim Holtz, or I think some of it's a mixture maybe. Some came from the Dollar Tree. They're just all little glass bottles. There's that mesh stuff you get from the Dollar Tree. Some black and some cream colored ones. Those are coffee dyed tags, and these are printables I got from Halloween Apothecary labels. You can print them free if you just Google Halloween Apothecary labels. Those are coffee dyed tags, and I got a little muslin there, or gauze. I wrote the word warts in some crazy font. I made some cross skulls or crossbones. And this was my very first time doing witches potions bottles. It did take me a little while to figure out what went where and what to do, and I just knew I wanted that big round glass one it looked just like a witch's cauldron to me, so I knew that had to be part of it. So I ended up taking some of this gauzy netting stuff. Tell you what, making those witches potion brews bottles was probably one of the most fun and exciting and didn't have to think about it projects. This is what inspired me to do the bigger ones. These little ones did take me some time. I did not record all of that because, like I said, it did take some time. And you kind of get the picture from seeing what I do to just these few little ones. So I just cut a little piece of that stuff, gauzy stuff, and Mod Podged it down. There's no wrong way to do these witches potion bottles. I think the messier and the more stuff you have on them, the better they are. And you don't have to use the whole picture. If you see like just the skull and crossbones you like, just cut that part out and use that. You don't have to use the whole thing. They are free printables, so you're not really losing anything. So I ended up ripping and crumbling up so it wasn't so straight and pretty. And just regular old Mod Podge that right down. I did go through a lot of Mod Podge with these witches potion bottles. but they're so fun. Like I said, there's no wrong way to do it. The more stuff on there, the better they look, I think. I do think the gluing on them really makes them, and then the different little paint techniques makes them pop. So we just Mod Podge that label on. Took that little guy. Mod Podge the warts label on. In hindsight, I probably should have glued this one on. It's kind of thick cardstock. It's just little tags that I coffee dyed and wrote on. So they're kind of thick. It did stay, but it would have been quicker to just dab a little hot glue on there. This was my first time ever doing these, so I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I was just kind of doing it as I went and figuring it out. But that Rust-Oleum flat enamel paint covered these bottles so well. I took a bunch of skewers. I laid down some craft paper in the yard, and I took some skewers and stuck them in the grass, and I put all my bottles upside down, and I spray painted them, and the coverage was really, really impressive. So I'm just Mod Podging that meshy stuff down. You can see how much Mod Podge I have on there. And to let them dry, I'm using them on a skewer. Now I take my hot glue and I just make like drips. Just take the glue and just kind of smash it around with your glue gun, because ultimately you want to look like your potion is bubbled over. So I do this with all of them. I stick them in the glass jar, upside down so they can dry. Some of this meshy stuff to my witch's cauldron. I just Mod Podged it up, stuck it on there, and just kind of went with it. And that mesh stuff, they go so far. I don't know what the correct name is. I don't have the package in front of me. I don't know what the proper name of it is, but you get a lot of that stuff. It'll last you a very long time. So Mod Podge made it stick, no problem. Put that aside. So this is just some gauze. There's so many different ways you can do these bottles. It's just kind of try to give you a little glimpse and screenshots of, or little videos of, you know, all the different materials you can use if you decide to make your own witch's potion bottles. They're so fun. Like I said, there's no wrong way to do it. So then after I had all the glue and all the mesh and everything on there, I turned around and I covered everything in black chalk paint. See the glue? See how you can see it? Once you cover it with the black, it just looks like your potion overflowing and dripping down your bottle. So I did that to every single one. There they all are. Did put a little bit of it on some of the label fronts. Now I'm taking brown and terracotta. Probably say I used more brown than terracotta, and I think this final step of using these colors really made them look more realistic. So I just and aged. So I just randomly used the same brush. I didn't clean it. Still has the black on it. And just kind of dibbled and dabbled it here, made it look a little rusty and old and bubbled over, and I think that was what it needed. Whoa, and send it flying. See how it makes it, it just makes it. And I put some, like I said, a little bit of paint on the labels so they didn't look so fresh, crisp, and clean. And I did that to all of them. So those set aside to dry. They're all dry. I think this is actually the next day. We're ready to finally assemble this beauty. I love this piece. I really, really love this piece. I think it's very creative. I think it's different. There's a lot of different textures and elements, and I think it could be pretty inspiring to some. I know for certain the Dollar Tree pieces themselves, to use them for molds in the future is definitely going to be fun to see what we can come up with. So those are all our bottles that we just did in the last little clip. Just trying to size everything up to see where it's going to lay right. And that's a pretty heavy glass, so I wasn't real sure how well it was going to stay down. So I did put E6000 on it for long-term hold and hot glue for, you know, to hold it in place till the E6000 dried. But it's got a little bit of weight to it. I wanted one of those plastic cauldrons to cut in half, and I didn't have one. And so I ended up finding that glass jar, and it worked perfectly. So then I just used hot glue on the other ones. Those bottles are pretty tiny. The hot glue held them no problem. But if you are going to spray paint glass, I would recommend that Rust-Oleum. I've spray painted glass before with different types of spray paint, but that black Rust-Oleum enamel flat I was really impressed with it. So these 3 bottles here are rounded. They have no flat edge, so is why I decided to stack them. They're very tiny. I thought they kind of looked cute. They kind of look like little beakers, kind of like scientist beakers. So we just stacked those in a pile of 3. Just regular hot glue. There's a close-up of them. This isn't Halloween scrapbook paper in the background, but I thought it kind of looked potion-y and witchy. I think it's like spelling words or something. I'm just seeing how this boot, the best place for it to fit, because it's not 100% flush on all points. So I was trying to see where it was actually sitting the best. So I'm taking E6000 and I'm spacing it out because I'm going to go back in between each of my blobs of E6000, and I'm going to use hot glue to hold it down now and have it hold it down so the E6000 can set. Now the boot's a decent size, so I had to go really quick with the hot glue so it didn't dry. So I just went in between each one super fast as I could go, so I could get it down before it dried. And it is really stuck on there now. Just hold it down a minute. Like I said, it's not 100% flush. It's much more flush than the hat, that's for sure. And there we have it. And look, there's where I hung it up upside down. That's when I realized I did it backwards. Go figure. I had a 50-50 shot to get it right and I got it wrong. So I'm just gluing the last witch's potion bottle down. The hat is much more flush, but it has the clay on it, but it's still not, 100%. I wish the hat came ripped apart like the boot. It came out fine with the clay, but I'm curious now if all of the new ones that come out for the different holidays break in two, or we have to cut them in two. So I'm doing the same exact thing I did with the boot. I'm spacing out my E6000. And then I'll go in between my E6000 with the hot glue. Like I said, they're really sturdy and stuck on there now. The glue is set up. Again, gotta move quick. so your hot glue doesn't dry on you. Of course, I had to put a new stick in. Use my face to assist. I absolutely love how this came out. It was a big project, but it was a lot of fun. I did some new techniques. I learned some new stuff. So overall, it was really fun. It was a fun, exciting, unique piece. And there we have it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Sprinkle, sprinkle.